Hello, here's a new episode. And before we start properly, let me just remind you that the sponsor for my podcast and for this episode is italki. italki offer you a very simple way to get one-to-one lessons with teachers, qualified teachers who are anywhere in the world. I mean, you get teachers in the UK, for example, or teachers in Canada, the United States, Australia, or in fact, let's say native English speakers or qualified teachers who are living anywhere. It doesn't matter where they are because it's all done over the internet. So essentially, you go onto italki and you search through all the different teachers they have, and you can see, for example, their reviews, how many lessons they've taught, the ratings that they've received from other users. You can see what particular skills they have, if they have a particular set of skills which they can use to help you, develop your English. They could help you with like preparing for the IELTS exam or job interviews, or just generally helping you develop your English or your business English, pronunciation, grammar, vocabulary, or just conversation and language feedback. Lots and lots of possibilities. italki is a very well-established platform upon which you can find one-to-one teachers. So try it, okay? Give it a try. It's getting speaking time and actually talking and engaging in conversation is vital for your English. And so if you might be thinking, but who can I talk to? What can italki is the answer that you're looking for. And remember, italki are offering all of you a free lesson when you buy some talking time. Go to teacherluke.co.uk/talk or click an italki logo on my website. You're listening to Luke's English Podcast. For more information, visit teacherluke.co.uk. Hello, listeners. How are you today? I hope that you are well. I hope you're well today. Physically and mentally well. In this episode, you're going to hear a conversation with Amber and Paul, both regular guests on this show, as you'll know if you're a long-term listener. I thought I could do this episode with no introduction. That's what I was thinking when I started recording it just yesterday when I had Amber and Paul here in the flat. I thought, I'm just going to do this one with no intro. We're going to go straight into it. Right? That's what I thought, just jumping straight into the conversation. But I've decided that actually I do need to say just a few things before we start. I think it will help put our conversation in context, which should help you to understand it all and generally keep up with our fast talking. I know, I can't help doing these rambling introductions, but what are you going to do? Huh? What are you going to do? There ain't nothing you can do. So when I get together with Amber and Paul, we talk quite quickly and we talk about things that you might not know about, like things that we've seen and done together. And that might make it hard for you to keep up and understand everything because obviously you're listening in a second language, right? I mean, if you are a native speaker of English and you're listening to this, then you might be thinking, what? Don't patronize me. But I'm obviously talking to my audience of learners of English out there. So it might be hard for you to understand this fast conversation. So a bit of context from me now might help. This is going to make the episode longer, definitely, but that's all right, isn't it? That's okay? Yeah, of course it's okay. Good. So Amber, Paul and I are all stand-up comedians. And in fact, that is how we know each other. We all originally met while doing stand-up in English in Paris. Stand-up, you should know by now, is a form of comedy entertainment in which one comedian stands on stage with a microphone and tells jokes and stories to make the audience laugh. Amber and I do stand up on a kind of part-time basis while also doing other work, but Paul is a full-time comedian and is actually quite famous these days, particularly in the French-speaking world. He's made some TV programs for French television and YouTube, and also he has a one-man stand-up comedy show which has been very successful, playing to large theatres of people. Sometimes Paul invites other comedians to open his shows, which means doing 5 to 10 minutes of stand-up in front of Paul's audience in order to warm them up before Paul takes the stage. So you'll hear us talking about when Amber and I opened for Paul in a big theatre recently. I think I mentioned it on the podcast, didn't I? Maybe that was in some bonus audio for a recent episode. Anyway, so we talk about that, and then we go on to talk about other stories and experiences of doing stand-up comedy over the years. I don't know if you've ever seen stand-up comedy live in a club or a theatre, or if you've ever watched a lot of stand-up on TV. It might not be a big thing in your country. I don't know. But a great stand-up show is possibly the best kind of comedy entertainment, because when it goes well, you just laugh so much. You laugh until your face hurts. That's how good it can be. When you see a really good comedian and you're actually there in the room and you've got good seats and it's a good show, you will laugh a lot. And you laugh so much that your face hurts, really. I've come out of comedy shows in the past feeling like, you know, when you've just had a really good time with your friends and you've just laughed and laughed and laughed and you can actually feel it in your face. Well, I've come out of comedy shows in the past feeling like that. It's amazing. Now, that rarely happens with films in the cinema, I think. When was the last time you went to the cinema and you laughed all the way through, like every 15 seconds you're laughing? Well, a good stand-up show will be like that. You laugh every 15 seconds, pretty much. I mean, that's not... I don't know if anyone's measured it, but you know what I mean. Like, there's a lot of laughs and it happens very regularly, as much as even like laughing lots of times per minute. That's a good stand-up show. A bad stand-up show, on the other hand, can be extremely uncomfortable and embarrassing. For the audience, it can be uncomfortable because you kind of watch someone sort of, dying on stage is the expression that we use. And obviously for the comedian, it's mortifying. But what makes a show good or bad? The thing is, as a comedian, after performing on stage even just a few times, you realise that it's not just you, your jokes, your performance that make the show good. There are other factors involved that are terribly important for making sure a show is successful and that the audience have a good time. I mean, you can do pretty much the same thing, like the same material, the same jokes, the same stories at one show and get lots of laughs, but then do it at another show in front of a different audience in a different room with different conditions, and it can get no laughs. So it's not just the comedian, it's also the conditions. Certain things are vital, basically, to make sure that the show goes as well as possible. Sometimes these things are just out of our control, but for people running comedy shows, these are the things that they're thinking about. Obviously, you need a good performer with good material. You need funny people. But also, the audience need to be able to see and hear the comedians on stage. That might seem obvious, but sometimes you go to shows and the microphone doesn't work, or you go to shows and the room, something about the acoustics of the room mean that the audience is kind of like, what, you know, they can't really understand what's being said, and other factors. So the audience needs to be able to see and hear the comedians on stage. There shouldn't be many other distractions in the room going on. The audience should probably be sitting in the dark a little bit so that they don't feel too self-conscious. The audience should be sitting together fairly close to each other and fairly close to the performers. If there's lots of space between the audience members and space between the audience and the stage or the performer, that doesn't really work. They should be comfortable, but not too comfortable, and it helps to bring the comedians on and off the stage quite quickly in order to keep the energy up. It also makes a difference how you introduce the comedians on the stage and how you have them exit the stage in order to manage the expectations and the reactions of the audience, and generally to make the audience feel like the performers know what they're doing and to make sure the audience remember the comedians at their funniest moments. For example, to end on a laugh and not to end on a dead moment. In fact, there are loads of little factors which you should get right in order to run a successful comedy show, and you might not be aware of those things when you're in the audience. It's show business, basically. But the thing about stand-up is that if the show doesn't go very well, then for the comedian, it's especially painful because you're basically up there completely on your own and you're completely exposed. It's not like in music when you can basically hide behind your song or your instrument, and you probably have other musicians on stage with you, which kind of helps if the show doesn't go very well. As a stand-up, if things don't go well, then you know about it instantly because nobody laughs, and it's like you're dying up there. On the other side of the coin, when it goes really well and the audience laugh a lot, it's an incredible feeling for everyone, particularly the comedian. But any stand-up who's done even just a few gigs will have stories of both good and bad experiences. It's particularly common for comedians to share with each other their stories of the bad experiences and the times when they died on their arse, which is how comedians call having a bad gig. We call it dying on your arse. A gig, by the way, means a show or concert. Stand-ups love to tell each other about difficult gigs that they've experienced. It makes us feel better, and also stories of failure are usually pretty funny, right? So I'm saying all this because basically in this conversation you're going to hear Amber, Paul and me talking about some good gigs that we've had recently, and then some stories of truly awful experiences of dying on stage. Not literally dying. We didn't literally die because, well, if we had actually died on stage, then we wouldn't have been able to record this because we would be dead. Maybe we could have come back as ghosts or something, but obviously ghosts can't talk. Well, they can't talk normally because they're ghosts and they're made of clouds or whatever. I don't know. What are ghosts made of? They're made of clouds or just mist? I don't know. Smoke? So yeah, ghosts don't talk normally, do they? A bit like BBC News reporters don't talk normally. But certainly ghosts don't talk normally, because when they do talk, ghosts tend to speak like this. That's how ghosts speak, isn't it? And that's no good for podcasting, or any form of communication, really, except for scaring people out of an old house. I think that's the only thing that ghosts can really do in terms of communication. I mean, they can't, I don't know what, they can't buy bread in the bakery. I would like, sorry, can you speak normally? You know, I would like something. It's only for scaring people out of an old house. That's all that ghosts are good for. That's the only time when ghosts speak, isn't it? When some people enter their old house and they want to scare them away, and they say things like, "Who are you?" and leave this place. Things like that. Or maybe they want to steal their souls, right? That's the other thing they say. It's like, they say, "Join us." So, no, I'm just being silly. The point is that you're going to hear stories of us having bad gigs and, as we say, dying on our arses, but not literally, don't worry. Okay, right, I think that's it for context. I hope you can keep up with this then, and that you enjoy another conversation with Amber and Paul. And here we go. Amber and Paul are on the podcast. Amber and Paul are on the podcast. Amber and Paul are on the podcast. Amber and Paul are on another podcast. Paul's a very funny boy. His laugh I very much enjoy. Amber's got a lovely voice. If I could choose an accent, hers will be my choice. Yeah. So, hello, ladies and gentlemen of Podcast Land. Welcome to this new episode of, well, Luke's English Podcast, of course. I hope you're doing all right. I'm sitting here currently looking at the faces of the pod pals, Amber and Paul.
Hello.
Hello.
As they both look at me thinking, how long is this introductory ramble going to go on for? Hi, guys.
Hello. Sorry.
Hi.
Hello.
So I thought you were saying hi guys to your listeners there.
Me too.
So I didn't answer straight away.
I'm saying hi, guys, to just everyone. Anyone who's
Podjaw.
anyone who's in earshot of this. Hello. So nice to have you back, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
you.
I hope it's nice to be back.
It's more relaxing than the previous circumstances.
What were the previous circumstances?
We were in your co-working place. I don't know if you still
No,
use that.
I don't.
Because you've got this place now.
Got this place now.
Yeah. So we were there, and it was a very weird sort of unfinished co-working hipstery type place where there was no coffee available.
And no one was working.
Yeah, and I had to run off really quickly. I can't remember what I had. I had something important, apparently.
You're doing a radio. Live radio.
Oh, I was doing live radio, yeah. So that's usually the worst, is when it's live and you have to be there. I was late for it, but it was okay. They let me on.
Really?
So yeah, it's cool to actually be back on the podcast properly now.
Yeah.
And just being chilled out, and I've got nothing else to do today apart from the podcast. So for once.
So just relax.
I know, it's like the good old days.
Yeah.
Up in the terrace. Oh, we don't have the terrace.
We don't have the terrace,
anymore.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
No, that's gone.
I'm going to miss the days of going around trying to get the shade, and us slowly moving clockwise around your terrace as three white, pasty English people trying to not get sunburnt.
Because there was always just one spot. There was one spot that was in the sun, and one person had to occupy that spot, and so we were constantly having to turn round. Yes. Oh, those were the days. But no, these days it's a lot more kind of much more sort of controlled environment.
Well, to be fair, it's too cold and grey to be outside.
It is. Mm-hmm. Yeah, when the summer comes around again, we do have a little balcony, so we probably
can you actually stand out on that?
Yeah, we can be out there in a little line, just the three of us in a line, just standing there. So, how do you feel about heights? Yes, exactly. Okay, good.
And then the last time you and Paul met, quite stressful.
The last time Paul and I met was quite stressful.
I mean, yeah.
What was it?
Well, you were opening for Paul.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's true. The last time we all saw each other was...
Yeah.
You weren't on the same night, though, were you?
No.
No, you were on the same night as Sarah. No.
You were on one English person per night.
Oh, no, Sarah
Luke,
and Seb,
me,
because it was four of you, and Seb and Sarah did the show together.
My listeners are going, what are they talking about?
Yeah. It was the last three shows, listeners.
Of your show?
Of my show, my #Franglais show that you... if you've been listening to the podcast long enough, you knew me before I even started the show, and then so I did it for 3 years, and I was I wanted to finish it with a bang. So we did a big room in Paris called the Casino de Paris, and it's 1,400 seats. And we sold out 2 of the days, and the first day we had 1,100. So you were there on the second night, right?
Second night.
And Luke was there on the first night.
Yeah.
So the last time we all saw each other was, I guess it was last week? The week before last?
The week before last.
The week before last.
So how was it for you, Amber?
It was great.
Yeah. Amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, it was
you
lovely.
both did really well.
It was fun.
What was funny was that in the other rooms that I've done, I've found sometimes the French acts have done... they've got a better reception.
Yeah.
Well, because more people speak French.
Yeah, but you both went second, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So Shirley was before you, Luke. And then who was before you? Louis. Yeah, if something happened with the first people on stage on the 3 nights, that it didn't go... It was kind of a little bit... I think it's just the initial, there's 1,400 people, and I'm on the mic being like, hey, everyone, I'll be out in a couple of minutes, but I've got 3 opening acts.
Yeah.
And it's the initial of
It's not Paul.
It's not Paul.
Yeah. That's so the first person is just the lamb to the slaughter of they're just there to communicate the message that Paul isn't here, but he will be here later.
Yeah.
And then at least, I guess, with the second person being English, it's like, okay, this is a bit closer to Paul.
Yeah.
So they're a bit happier.
Yeah. Well, in fact, all 4 of you with Seb and Sarah, you guys did really well. And the French guys did a little less well than they normally do, which was weird.
Well, it makes a nice change, doesn't it?
Yeah. I remember because I don't think I told you this because I haven't seen you since, and I keep forgetting to tell you. But when we did my beer launch, when we did the comedy show where I had half French and half English, were you on that show as well? Yeah. I was drunk that night because I didn't realise how strong my own beer was.
So strong.
Everyone seemed to be drunk,
but you smashed it.
Yeah.
There's so much at the. I don't know if you were last. You were close to being last. And you absolutely smashed it. I've never seen you so much on fire in front of a crowd than you were on that night. I was a bit drunk, but I was just like, wow, what's going on here? I don't know what it was that you were doing, whether it was the energy that you were giving out.
I think what it was that, so...
did you notice it? Did you notice it?
Yeah, I definitely felt it, yeah, for sure. So, that everyone else had been going up, and a lot of the people in the audience were quite rowdy. There was quite a lot of talking during all of the performances.
Yeah.
There were people sort of talking a lot, and it was a bit... And I was there having a look, and I wasn't drinking that night either. So I was kind of stone cold sober.
You were a bit sick.
And I was a bit unwell. I wasn't feeling very well. And I was in a bad mood because I was feeling under the weather. And I was just sober, and I just wasn't having a good time. It's just, it was nice to be there. But at the same time, I was also just sort of a bit under the weather. And so... Yeah, everyone else was kind of drunk, and there was rowdiness going on in the audience.
Yeah, people were talking quite a lot, which was surprising because I'd never experienced that. I'd experienced that as an audience member in the UK, where it that happens all the time. But I've been so not used to seeing comedy in the UK. I was like, whoa, okay, this is like being back at home, I guess.
And the other thing was that I was like, what material am I going to do? And I think I spoke to you and Sarah.
Yeah.
And I was like, I think I'm just going to do the same old material. And I think you said to me, yeah, just do the tried and tested stuff. Just do it. Just enjoy doing stuff that you know. And I was like, okay. So then I felt like I had license to just do the stuff that I knew. Because when you've done material again and again and again, there's always that feeling of like, oh, I should do something new. And that doing the same stuff that I've done before is somehow cheating, especially when you've got other comics in the room and you want to kind of...
When there was a lot of us as well. I think there was eight. There was 4 English-speaking comedians and 4 French. So whenever
I do comedy, I'm always thinking I want to obviously make the audience laugh, but I want to make my friends laugh as well. I want to make the other comedians laugh. I want to make everyone in the room laugh. And so I feel a bit bad about doing material that they all know very, very well. And that kind of, if you go up on stage feeling a bit like that, then it kind of takes the sting out of your performance. But because you told me, no, just do that stuff that you know well, it's good. I felt like I'd been given license to just do that. So that was one thing. And the other thing was that because I'd seen that people were sort of being a bit rowdy in the room, I thought, right, I've got to just grab them by the scruff of the neck here and really sort of sell my performance and not take any shit from them.
Yeah.
And so I was expecting them to be all disinterested and talking amongst each other. So I just thought, right, I'll just go right up to the front of the stage and I'll just be really aggressive. And not that I'm a particularly aggressive person, but that was kind of me attempting to really assert myself. And also I didn't kind of smile or laugh during any of my material, I think. Maybe I did a bit, but I was conscious that I just kept this kind of serious look on my face throughout the whole performance. So I was doing all my stuff, and it's just like, you know, my feeling to an extent was like, fuck all of you bastards.
Yes. You know, that is because there's something about venues. Like Sarah and I, we did a piece together at One More, so it's in the same venue of that you did.
Yeah.
And it went really quite mediocre. It wasn't great. Yeah. And then we did our show and we went on another thing at that venue, but we were really like, fuck you all.
Yeah.
Super aggressive and like very in their face. And they were like, yes! Yeah. There's something about that audience, that crowd, that environment that really lends itself to like taking control of them.
Well, and that's how I found my voice, because I was performing at the Pan Am so much in French. And it's just, you get eaten alive almost in that place if you're a foreigner.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like I haven't seen Sarah perform in French since she started performing in French, because I haven't been back to the Pan Am in a long time. But when I started performing in French, the only way I could get people to laugh was exactly that. Like you got fucking just full on like, yeah, fuck you, and like not necessarily aggressive, but having an aggressive energy.
Yeah.
But not necessarily being aggressive, and it responded really well.
Yeah. So
I've kind of, I don't know, just mimicked that, I guess, from the early days at the Pan Am. And I found when I've been editing the video of the show that I've lost all of that. Having performed my show so much, the content of it doesn't annoy me anymore. Whereas before, stuff like La Bise and stuff like all this stuff actually genuinely annoyed me.
Yeah.
So I would go on stage with that genuine annoyance, and because I've said it so much, it's kind of cathartic. Where I've kind of it's diluted down a little bit, and it's kind of this, and people don't laugh as much as they used to in my mind. Like,
I think they probably do. Because when we did that gig in London, I saw they were laughing just as much as they normally did.
Yeah.
But you've got to find the right tone. You know, it's like at Pan Am or like in the One More, you know, you've got to own it. You've got to get on the stage. You've got to own it. But if you have that same aggression, maybe at somewhere like the New York Comedy Night or another night, it doesn't go down as well. And like with your show, what's really nice whenever we open for you, you don't actually need to be really aggressive. They're there to see comedy. They're with you. Yeah. And so if you're like, you're coming on quite strong, they're like, well, we don't need that. You've already convinced us.
But that audience were all talking to each other, and I was just annoyed. I was like, you bastards, you should be listening. That's just really rude. And so I had all this, I didn't realise that's how I was feeling, but I just kind of psyched myself up a little bit of like, okay, you're going to need to, this is going to be a tough crowd, so you're going to need to really grab them. And I guess something kicked in from being a teacher or something.
Right.
You know, something just kicked in there where it was just like, oh, fucking bastards. Let me just... teaching like younger, like large groups of students at university where, you know that they don't really want to be there, and maybe they don't even like you. And so you've just got to like put up this sort of slightly... not aggressive is not like the right word,
almost.
But or just assertive sort of approach where, being assertive. But I think ultimately in stand-up, the audience will enjoy what you're doing if they feel that you are confident in what in yourself. And sometimes just really pushing and being assertive against what you feel is a potentially hostile or uninterested crowd, disinterested crowd, is that pushes that level of confidence in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the conditions were just right.
Yeah.
And that was great. I had a really good time. And I came off and I was like, wow. That went well. And also there was
the most English reaction ever. Wow, that was pretty good.
There was no point as well at which I was trying to remember my material in my head, because often that's what stops me. Is that, especially when I'm doing new things, there's points where I'm going and then but it all just came out. I wasn't even thinking; it just came out.
Came out naturally. Yeah.
So that was good. It was a good show. What was weird about when I opened for you the other night at the Casino de Paris?
It was so funny.
They kept clapping everything. So, listeners, when you're doing stand-up, you've got sort of several responses that you want. Obviously, you want the audience to just laugh regularly at the bits that you're doing. And sometimes if you do something that's particularly good, they will break into applause, and there'll be an applause break, right? But then this audience were clapping, but it wasn't an applause. They weren't really doing applause breaks. They were just clapping as if... I don't know.
As if you were giving a TED talk.
Yeah, as if I was giving a political speech.
Yeah.
And they were like clapping every point I made as if I was like, yeah, that's right, you know?
Yeah, it was really strange. And it was the first one where normally you talk about French bread being great.
Yeah.
And you're like, yeah, the bread is great. And then you're like, well done, France, that's great. And then you move on to something else. Mm-hmm. And people go, yeah, that's a great joke, it's funny, yeah, the bread is good, they laugh. And then you've got your next. Here, they were just like, yep. And then they just started applauding straight away after you said French bread was great. And you're like, oh.
Yeah, and they were just applauding, but it wasn't like they were like laughing and like
1,000 people applauding as well.
You know? It was just like they were like, yeah, we agree with you. And then I was like, so I work here. I'm a teacher. Applause.
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck are you applauding that for?
And then, because you didn't have the time to get out of, obviously, because that's what you do if you speak English.
No, they weren't applauding the punchlines. They were applauding just the information the information in the setup to the joke. And there were others as well. So I was kind of going, and then when I started to talk about them applauding, they started to applaud less. So they I'm a teacher, applause. And I was like, oh, this is great. I love the way you're applauding everything I'm saying. Applause. And then I said, can you just follow me around in my life and just applaud me whenever I say anything? Slightly less applause.
Yeah.
And then I said, like, for example, next time I have an argument with my wife, can you just applaud me? And then I could be like, you see, they applauded. You see, I'm right. Like, timid applause. Like, what? Why are you applauding?
Maybe they were applauding themselves. They're like, he's an English teacher. Yes, we understood that.
Yes. No, that's what I think it was. I genuinely think they were applauding because they're like, we are enjoying this. We like you, and we understood what you just said. But laughter didn't happen because laughter is an instinctive reaction to finding something funny.
It's odd when you have the applause without the laughter. Not without the laughter, but almost at the same time.
Instead of the laughter.
Like this, again, editing my stand-up from March last year was when we filmed it.
You filmed it, you're editing the video.
Yeah, we're editing the full show to release it on TV and YouTube.
It's going to be on YouTube, folks.
It's going to be on YouTube.
Yeah.
So, well, you'll probably link to it whenever it's whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's interesting that when we were filming it, there was a point where there was a lot of laughter, and I'm normally used to like an applause break at that specific time.
Yeah.
So I've got this kind of crutch, though I've got my glass of beer on stage, which is a kind of a handicap almost. It's like because I don't know when people applaud, I don't know what to do with myself. I don't know how to behave. I don't know how to stand. I don't know what to do. So I've just become accustomed to going and grabbing a drink from my pint when people applause, and there's times where like it's so ingrained that moment for some reason that's when they applaud, where there's times where they don't now. So I finish the joke and they're like and I walk over to the beer and I'm like, shit, this is silence. Oh great. And it's really awkward, but there was one time in the editing where that happened, where I was like, "Yep, I'm going for the beer, no applause," and it's only until like when I think it became like an automatic how do you say automatism? How do you say that in English?
It just became an automatic
response of the audience. Like when I go to the beer, they need to applause. So it was me, because normally I wait for the applause, then I go grab the beer. But this one I went for the beer first, and then they were like, "Oh, I think we should applaud now." I think that's the point where,
in a way, that's good though. That's really good because you're actually training the audience to applaud at certain spots.
Yeah,
like that is actually good. I mean, the audience.
Well, that's a technique.
Yeah, definitely.
Controlling the audience when they laugh,
training
when they applaud.
them to applaud to you, and at least they did applaud when you went to the beer.
Yeah,
it would have been worse if they it was just silence, just tumbleweeds blowing across the stage.
But it's like, when you're preparing something like a new joke or some material, and in your mind you're like, pause for laughter.
Yeah.
There's no laughter.
Should never do that. Yeah, that's terrible.
How do I get this better?
Or like sometimes you'll see someone doing a new stand up, and you can imagine them imagining it going really well, and you're like, no. In your mind there was some more.
Or your delivery is so like, this is gonna, or if you had good jokes before and people have laughed, but for some reason that audience are just not into you, and you go out. I felt this when I did the football awards last year. I died so bad on my arse on live TV.
Tell us the story, come on.
Yes.
So I was doing twice it's happened where Canal Plus, the French TV company who I've been working with What the Fuck France and Stereo Trip and all that stuff, twice they asked me to do a thing. It's like the Oscars, but for football and for rugby. And both times I was like, okay, cool. I don't really know that much about rugby. I don't know that much about football. Let me write some jokes. I had 5 minutes basically to do some jokes in front of this audience who are mainly all rugby players or football players.
Okay.
The football one was worse because I was sat at a table. It's the French Football Awards, so anyone who plays football in France is sat at the table. Yeah. And so,
wait, all of those like PSG players?
all of them.
Who?
Name. Yeah, so I was sat at this table. The table is probably about the same size as this table here. It sits about 6 people around, so 3 on each side or whatever. Yeah. I sat at the table next to me, about 3 meters away, is Neymar, his kind of crew or whatever.
Yeah.
And people I don't recognise because I don't follow football here. So I know they're all... You can tell who the footballers are and who aren't because of the haircuts, because of the suits, because of the accessories, the tattoos. And then sat at the table 10 metres behind me is the original Ronaldo.
Whoa.
Like fat Ronaldo.
The first Ronaldo.
The first Ronaldo.
Ronaldo 1.
Brazil Ronaldo rather than Portugal Ronaldo.
Who's the original Ronaldo? I couldn't even recognise Neymar in a lineup.
The original Ronaldo from football, from like the World Cup.
Is he the one with the teeth?
Yes. There we go.
There we go.
As opposed to Ronaldo now, who has no teeth.
Who's got no teeth?
Is he the one with the teeth? No, the one with the hole in the middle of the bald-headed one.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I'm already like, wow, okay, this is a serious night, and I don't even remember. I was presenting the award for the best French footballer abroad.
Oh, when you said the Oscars for football, I thought you meant like best performance of like best dive, best fake injury.
Well, they weren't funny. They were serious awards, like best goal scorer, best defender, best goalkeeper. Best each position, best play, best whatever. So there was a bunch of things. I was giving the award for best French footballer who plays abroad, and so most of them, I think there was a couple. There was like Antoine Griezmann, who's in
Germany.
No, he was in Spain. Anyway, the winner was N'Golo Kante, who plays in the UK. Now I know who he is because of the French World Cup. They won the team, so I know who the French football team are now.
Yeah.
Because I didn't follow any of that 6 months ago before the World Cup. I had no idea who these people were. And so...
You're reading their Wikipedia pages and just like, shit, what can I say?
Not even. Here was my whole bit. My whole thing was like, all right, I'm happy to be here because I'm performing. I mean, I'm delivering the award to the best footballer who plays abroad, and obviously, if you're playing abroad, you need to speak the language of that country, which is kind of a similar situation to me. Like, I've had to make my career in a different country and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
However, and I can't remember how I led into the joke, but I basically started with a joke with Arsene Wenger, the Arsenal coach, who I was like, yeah, but he didn't really do that well because he's been living in the UK for like 27 years or whatever. He just retired from Arsenal.
Yeah.
But his accent is shit. And so, so I imitated him speaking English.
Yeah.
I mean, no laughs. Anyway, like none of it is getting laughs. Everyone's just like, "Who the fuck is this guy?"
Yeah.
Right? Because they don't know who I am.
Yeah. Oh god.
And then And I can't remember what joke I made after that. I made like 2 other jokes, and I was like, and here are the nominees. And the guy wasn't even there. He wasn't the N'Golo Kante, the guy who won it. He wasn't even in the room yet. So I was just like, and the winner is N'Golo Kante. He's not here. Cool. We'll watch a video or something. I can't remember. It was just awful.
Yeah, and you had to stand there feeling terrible while the video played, and you were like, I just can't wait to get off the stage.
And I made a vlog about it, and I've got the video, the footage of me dying on my arse is
really?
on YouTube. Yeah, it's all available.
I'll have to link.
You'll find the thing. But it was going back to what you were saying, Amber, about the confidence, and sometimes you go out there. I went out there confident. I was like, there's no reason I'm making fun of Arsene Wenger. They know Arsene Wenger and he speaks shit. This is going to be amazing. So I went out like full confidence.
Yeah.
I was still nervous, but I just delivered it confidently.
But one wonders, are footballers known for their sense of humour?
Yeah.
Would anyone have made them laugh?
And also,
it's not the footballers. I think it's just because like the rugby was the same. And I've recently been listening a lot to different interviews with Kevin Hart about the Oscars thing that he's not doing anymore.
Yeah.
But that all comedians have been talking about him and his situation with the Oscars. And apparently the Oscars is horrific as well. Like, all award ceremonies are terrible because people are all stressed out. They're waiting to get their awards. They don't know if they're going to. They're not in the mood to laugh.
And also, they feel like they're the ones that are at the center of attention.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they feel like, how do I look good for the cameras which are moving around, shooting everyone in the audience and stuff. So, yeah, and sounds like also, anything that's not a stand-up gig, that's not organised and prepared and set up as a stand-up gig, you've got huge chances of dying on your ass.
And that's what happens again and again, because people are always messing around with the format. Let's do stand-up and brunch. Let's do stand-up.
Yeah.
Stand-up and brunch.
Any minute now. I'm going to ask you to describe your worst ever gig, okay? But before we do that, do you remember, talking of people sort of messing with the formula, do you remember when we did a gig on the boat? La Nouvelle Scène.
Yeah.
We did a gig down there set up by what's her name?
I heard about this.
What's her name? Who to be fair to her, she's done some TV presenting work. She's French but speaks English.
Yes.
She'd done some TV presenting work. I think she'd done maybe bits of comedy and had enjoyed it and done quite well. And she was like, I'm going to move into doing comedy, because she wanted to be like the new Jimmy Fallon of France and stuff like that. Fair enough. But she was green when it came to doing stand-up. And so she set up this show. She got people involved. She did get a bit of an audience down there and all that stuff. But then she made the decision to, two things. One, she interviewed the comedian on stage directly after their set.
No. After the set?
Yeah, so...
Yes.
So we know from stand-up that basically you make the audience applaud and go wild for the comedian. The comedian comes up, does their set. They say, that's it from me. That's all my time. And they leave and they just disappear. Right? That's the best way.
And then maybe at the end of the show, you stand by the door and say goodbye to everyone. If you've done a good set, if you've gone horribly, I hate doing
you
that.
Just hide or something.
Just hide, yeah.
But she made everyone stop. Like, well, that's all my time. Thanks very much. Applause and whatever. And then she came on and said, wait a minute, and held you there for an awkward conversation. It's like, and you kind of feel like everything.
It wasn't promo, like, hey, what are you up to? Because that happens sometimes on French nights, where after your set, if people don't all come back at the end to be like, yeah, I've got this show every Thursday, Friday, sometimes they do it at the end of their set. They're like, hey, where can we find you? And you go, great, I do a podcast, find me online.
I don't remember.
No, it was much more awkward than that, because she kind of wanted to be an interviewer / comedy person. It was weird.
Yeah, it was.
Oh, was she doing like the Late Show type thing, where if you're on Jimmy Fallon as a stand-up comedian or whatever the Late Show it is, you do your set and then sometimes you then go and sit down and have like
it was kind of like that, but those sit-down interviews are usually quite well prepared, I think, where they agree, okay, you're going to tell this story, blah, blah, blah. But no, it wasn't like that at all. It was just very awkward, where we're just standing there and she started asking these questions. Do you remember how she managed to get me on stage? Do you remember what happened there?
Yeah, she made a ruse, didn't she?
She did a happening, as they say in France.
That was awful.
Yeah.
What?
So she decided it would be really great if at one point during the show she said to anyone, "Hey, has anyone done stand up before here, or does anyone want to be a? That's it. What's your dream?" And she told me that I had to say, and in the end I went along with it because I was like, I'm not going to mess with her plans because she's got this whole thing planned out. She had the whole evening planned out. And I was like, all right, I'll do it. And so she said to the audience, what's your dream? And she points at me and
you
goes,
were like, I want to be a stand-up.
yeah, exactly.
Yes, exactly.
She points at me and says, what's your dream? And I said, to be a stand-up. And she's like, well, do you want to try? And then like, what do you think, guys? Should we give him a try? And of course the audience were like, well, I suppose so. Like feeling obliged to say yes. And so she was like, okay, come on up then. So I like got up and I did my set, which obviously I'd done loads of times before.
So you'd never mentioned like going up being like, yeah, that was...
No.
Yeah.
I just went up and did my stuff. And and then she stopped me and she talked to me and it was really embarrassing and awkward. But then when you went up, you did your set and she talked to you afterwards. Do you remember what she said to you?
I mean, I can barely remember what I did this morning, so please enlighten me.
So she was talking to you and she said to you, "Oh my God, I can't believe that you forgot your baby downstairs in the basement of your building. I can't believe that you forgot your baby in the what do you call the place where you put the pram in the building?
Storage.
The pram storage area. I can't believe you forgot your baby in the pram storage area."
Was this part of your set?
No,
because it was on the podcast.
Yeah, because what happened? Because remember on the podcast we played the Lion game. And Amber told a story about how she forgot her baby in the pram and went upstairs and had a cup of tea, and then realised that she left her baby downstairs.
Yeah.
And it was a lie, right? And that episode is on YouTube as well. That one because I videoed it. So she obviously watched maybe part of that conversation, the bit with you. She didn't realise that it was the Lion game, and so she's there in front of the whole audience saying, "I can't believe you left your baby downstairs and went upstairs for a cup of tea." And you were like, "But no, it was a lie. It was a lying game." And she was like, "What?" And the audience are like, "What is happening?"
That's like the Russian joke. That's like, do you know what I mean? That's like, yes, we've got it in. No, it's like being on stage and be like, "Oh yeah," it's like they're not rushing to get in. You're like, "What?" And then the other person knows it's just like how it just takes too long to explain it to a room of 70 people.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
It was a real shame because by getting you up, the audience expectations were really low. Mm-hmm. And conversely, instead of that meaning, then you were like, did an amazing set. When people... This is sometimes a problem about being a woman. When you get on stage, people are like, this is going to be shit. Mm-hmm, and you have to really convince them it's going to be great.
Yeah.
And so they were like, oh my God, this is going to be awful. This poor guy, what a sado wanting to be a stand-up and just, he's going to do his shitty little bits of material and it's going to be rubbish. So they were expecting something rubbish, but then they didn't give you, it took them, do you know what I mean? If you just come out as a comedian, they'd been like, okay, he's a comedian, this is going to be funny. But they were thinking, this is not going to be funny. Yeah. And it was horrible.
Another rule of doing a stand-up show is that you need to, without pushing it too far, you need to make the audience think that this person is funny. So that if there's any doubt, that they will think, oh, no, he is funny.
Yeah.
Like confirmation bias. You need to subtly suggest, or not so subtly, suggest to the audience before the person comes up that they are funny. Yeah. And don't worry, this person has been checked and verified as a genuine funny person.
Well, it's a double-edged sword, isn't it? Because there's that thing of you don't necessarily want to be introduced as the funniest person ever.
Yeah, no.
Where people are like, oh, this person's amazing. You're going to have such a good time. You're going to laugh. He makes me laugh all the time. Please welcome to the stage, Luke Thompson.
Yeah.
Because it sets the experience of like, if for some reason you have a bad night, then people are like, oh, God.
You're setting the expectations too high.
But
at the same time, you shouldn't set the expectations so low because that means people will then automatically interpret everything you're doing as being rubbish. They'll expect it to be rubbish. And the things that you do will kind of confirm that it's rubbish.
Well, I remember...
they just need a basic confident evaluation of like, he's a friend of mine, very funny man, Paul Taylor, and that's enough.
Exactly. You don't want to start messing around. And that's it, messing around. Even like that gig at the Coupole, they messed around with the format.
Mate.
Some people were eating, they were getting entertained with music.
Yeah, no.
Don't mess with the format.
Don't mix music and comedy. People always think, oh, we'll have some music, then we'll have some comedy. No music.
You can do it if it's comedy first.
Yeah.
Then there's a break, then there's music.
Sure.
Right.
And they're not mixed. You can't have music comedy. Music comedy. You can have all comedy for like half an hour where people are sat down, whatever, and it's like, great, that's the comedy over, now we'll have music. That can work.
Not comedy outside.
Yeah.
And not comedy and anything, like comedy and pole dancing, comedy and music. No.
It needs to be just comedy in a darkened, uncomfortable room
Yeah.
where the audience have got no choice but to watch and listen to the comedian, where there's nothing else going on, and it should be uncomfortable. The chairs should be slightly rickety and slightly...
Yeah, we've had this discussion.
Yeah, we have.
Since the So Gymnase, which is the first place where we always, I guess, where we all performed, right?
It was too comfortable.
In
Too
Paris.
comfy.
It was, the seat, anyway.
Right. So
another
worst gig ever? Have you got like a worst gig story that you can think of? Have you got any particularly bad experiences as a comic?
I mean, there's plenty of gigs where there was no people,
Mm-hmm.
or like you did a sort of slow death, or that horrible moment where you're like, da-da-da-da, pause for laughter, no one laughs. You're like, normally people laugh. But I think the worst gig was the one I did that you came to.
Which one?
For Becoming Mum.
Oh, yeah.
Sold out show to
Sold out?
French
Wait,
teenagers.
you start the story properly. One day, a long time
ago. Sarah and I
Once
have that
upon a
show.
time.
Yeah, exactly. Are you sitting comfortably?
So Sarah and I have the show Becoming Mum. It's a small theatre, quite intimate, like 70-seater, really nice. And we worked quite hard to get tickets. Well, one day Luke was coming and a few other people, but we sold out. But it was one group, a whole group, and this teacher had come up from Lyon with her class of kids and they were between like 13 and 15.
Oh, no.
They barely spoke English. They weren't the target audience, obviously, because it's about motherhood.
I mean, there's so many not target things about that scenario. 13 to 15, not from Paris.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like
Didn't
here,
speak English.
not for them. I mean, they were having an awful time. I mean, the teacher was like shushing them. To be fair, they were quite well behaved, but there were moments where I just thought, oh my God, and it was savage.
Yeah. So I went with my wife and like we knew that it was a sold out show. The two of you had said it's sold out, which is good because that means there'll be an audience. But
you knew before the show.
We knew it was a group.
Well, they knew it was a group, so it's like sold out. It's a group, and I think they're students. So that they, Sarah and Amber said to us, so you might want to come the following week, because we don't know what this show's going to be like. It's a bit of an unknown quantity. But the two of it, we said, well, we'll go anyway. We're going to go to that show. So we came down, and we were standing outside the venue, and suddenly appears a huge group of 13 to 15-year-old school kids,
right?
Yeah,
with their backpacks and all that stuff.
Their little packed lunches.
Yeah, and like two or three stressed out teachers who were like trying to get them to come on, everybody, here we are, and then and my wife my wife and I were looking at them going, shit, do you think that's the oh my God, that's it. That's the group, isn't it? Oh. They're going to come and see this show. Oh my God, I hope they know what they're in for. Because from people listening to this who haven't seen Amber and Sarah's show, it's a show about having children, and it's quite specific in some places. There are some it's very, very, very funny. There are some graphic descriptions of childbirth and some of the sort of issues that can occur during childbirth that perhaps we don't all know about unless we've got direct experience of it, because some of those things can be pretty sort of, explicit, graphic, and frightening, in fact.
Indeed.
Yeah. But they deal with those scary subjects with humour in the best possible way, right?
With the students mix, so they're boys and girls.
Boys and girls, okay. And so they all packed into the room, and we were sitting on the front row, and we could just hear.
You were sat on the front row.
We were sitting on the front row. We could hear all this this conversation of these children behind us. And I'd seen the show before, so I was thinking, I can't wait to see what's going to happen here. This is going to be, how is this going to go? Are they going to be able to actually survive the whole show, of the 1 hour show? And they were talking a lot, and the teachers were kind of stressed out and trying to be strict and keep them all in line. And the show began, and at the beginning it was all right. They were not talking over you. They didn't laugh.
No.
Because they didn't understand anything.
They didn't know what was going on. They couldn't understand.
And then slowly the level of chat started to rise, and then the teachers would be like, shh. And the chat would go down, silence again. there was a group of us on the front row who were not part of that group. So there was a group of like friends
5-10 people,
or expats on the front. We were all laughing and having a good time, but behind us was just like this kind of black hole, this weird sort of swirling vortex of children not understanding what's going on. But they were fairly well behaved. They could have been worse.
Yeah,
but I wonder what they thought about some of the childbirth in reenactment
scenes. Yeah, no, it was horrible. That was a rough gig.
Oof. But well done, you. I have to say that you both of you maintained your professional stage faces all the way through. I think there were a couple of moments where the two of you looked at us on the front row and we exchanged a couple of glances. But other than that, you just did the show and you were very professional about it.
That's all you can do.
Yeah.
That's all you can do, because the minute you sort of break out of it, you become a teacher or a mum. Like, come along, children, be quiet.
That's the disadvantage, I guess.
It was rough.
Especially with your show, because it was becoming maman, and it's like you literally became it on stage.
Yeah.
Shut up!
All of you to your rooms now. Oh, sorry, we're in a comedy show.
Yes, it was pretty rough. That, I think, was the roughest gig. Paul, rough gig?
Yeah, I guess the second worst one was the rugby night.
So you've done the football.
The first one was football.
So that's the football one. So the rugby one was the reason. So the Canal Plus were like, yeah, cool, we've got this rugby night, which is the same thing, awards for rugby players, whatever. I wasn't giving out an award. They just wanted me to do 5 minutes. It was me and like 2 other comedians, and I was like, hey, I don't really know what I'm doing because it's the Olympia. It's the rugby. I don't really understand rugby, whatever. And the guy was like, yeah, but it's the Olympia, the room, the Olympia, which is the kind of the most famous theatre in Paris.
Yes.
That a lot of comedians aspire to be. I was like, oh, is it? Oh, cool. Well, I guess I'll have to do it then. Because, you do 5 minutes at the Olympia. So I know nothing about rugby. Again, I've written material. This time I really don't remember what the joke was about. But I did like 5 minutes on not really knowing rugby or whatever it was. I was really like planning it. I was writing it at home. I was like, yeah, this could be cool, great. And we arrive at the theatre, and that same night I was flying to Shanghai to do my show out there for French expats. So the flight was at like 11 p.m. And I brought it. We were going for 2 weeks out there with Addie, my wife, and so I had my massive bag with me. So I show up to she stayed at home. She was going to just join me at the airport afterwards. She couldn't be bothered coming. She didn't want to arrive and see a bunch of Canal Plus people dressed in like tracksuit, airplane 12-hour flight clothes.
Yeah.
So she was like, "I'll just meet you at the airport." I'm like, "Great, fine." So I show up with like my stage outfit, just like in a black shirt or whatever, because it was like an award. Everyone was like tuxedoed up, so I was like, no, I don't have one, so I'll just wear a black shirt. So I wore black shirt, black trousers, whatever, and in my suitcase was my tracksuit that I was going to get changed into at the theatre before going to the airport. So anyway, show up at the Olympia. It's very impressive. The backstage area is huge. There's champagne everywhere. There's lots of famous people who I don't know because, I'm English. Yeah. But you can just tell famous people, like, oh, you must be somebody. Anyway, I'm introducing myself. Hi, Paul. Hi, nice to meet you. Hi, great. Meeting all these people. Stress is building because the show, I look out the curtain. It's mainly rugby players. There's the head of Canal Plus who sat in the front row as well.
Big TV executive.
Yeah, who obviously, his second hand man or whatever. It's just great. So the thing starts and it's pretty quiet. Like nothing. I can't remember who hosted or who was doing whatever. Yeah. And I was just like, oh, this is going to be rough, man. Yeah. And so I'm hyping myself up. I'm like, no, I'm just going to go out and deliver it. I'm going to be really, energetic and really. Yeah. What's the word? Confident, like the football one. The football one happened after this, so I didn't learn from my mistake at the rugby. So this is the first proper thing. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to go out there. It's going to be amazing. I'm jumping up and down behind stage, going through my stuff. This is hilarious. This is going to be fun.
Pumping yourself up. Get pumped up.
I go out, and I think they showed like a 5-second. What the fuck? I think it was just the opening credits for What the Fuck.
They showed a clip from your show.
Not a clip, just the opening thing of the walking from London to Paris. Mon chéri, What the Fuck, France. And then I came out to that.
Yes, okay.
Because apparently it was a thing. Anyway, so I go out and I'm like, no, this is fine. I'll come out. And I can't remember what I said. I just remember being heckled by some like 15-year-old students, what sounded like at the top of the theatre. It's like a 3,000 seater theatre.
Yeah.
So I'm getting heckled at some stage.
Wait, what did the person say? Do you
can't remember. I've blocked it out of my memory.
It was just like, "Whoa!"
Yeah, I think I started performing in my fake French accent. You know, the bonjour, je m'appelle Paul, whatever, blah, 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 which normally goes down well. Silence. First joke, silence. And I'm starting to sweat.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what do I do? And I'm just looking at the audience, because it's being filmed. The audience are like lit up. Fully lit. I can see everyone. Everyone's faces properly.
And so wait, the audience are being filmed as well.
Yeah.
So they feel super uncomfortable.
Someone there. And I'm like, I'll try the next joke. Hey, here's the next joke. Pow! Nothing. I'm like, oh. So,
oh, God.
So I'm like, I'm just going to have to eat shit for 5-10 minutes, whatever it was. So I'm carrying going. Halfway through, I get a text on my phone. I forgot to put it on silent. My phone's going
in your pocket.
Oh, so that's putting me off even more. I'm tripping over my words. It's horrific.
Just tell us what it's like when you do a joke. And normally, if the show's going all right, you get a response. It's like having a conversation with the room. You say a thing and you just get back from the room, which is like laughter, stuff like that. You just get responses.
Yeah.
What's it like when you do your material and just nothing happens? What physically and sort of, what's the actual feeling of that?
Well, what happens to me is that when I get no response of something I think is going to get a response, and then I keep going and still nothing's happening. Like if it happens once, I just like, oh, okay, cool, and then I'll go on to the next thing. If it happens like twice, then what happens is I start sweating quite a lot. I get really hot, and I start to lose confidence in what I'm saying, so that my delivery becomes even less good than it was.
Yeah,
it just becomes. I sometimes stumble over my words. I don't really know, because I have never seen myself, I've never watched myself back when. But
I want to know exactly what it feels like from inside you, so that my listeners who've never done this, will know what it actually feels like.
I think it probably feels.
It feels like you stepped out into the void.
Yes.
Like you've kind of got that moment before you're about to plunge to your death sort of feeling. It's something like sinking, because it's exactly like these are the things that happen. You start something, doesn't go well one time, fine, doesn't go again. And it's like the air's sucked out of the room. You see those arms crossed, those closed faces. You start speaking faster and you feel like you're sort of clinging to the side of the cliff, like, ah!
Yeah.
I've got to get back, but you're going to just plummet.
It probably feels similar to I would put it in the same sort of reactions internally as if you go to kiss a girl or a boy, if you're a girl or whatever, to kiss a person that you like, and they turn away, and they're like, no, sorry, that you misunderstood what was going on here.
Yeah.
When that happens,
rejection,
that feeling. It's the same feeling of me. Like when it's happened maybe 2 or 3 times where I've gone in for a kiss and it's been like, whoa, no, this wasn't that. And I'm like, oh, and it just, you don't know what to do. You don't know how to react. You don't know. It's awkward because you can't just leave that situation. You can't, the girl is in front of you
there's no escape.
There's no escape from it. Same thing when you're on stage and you can't just run off stage. You just have to keep going. You just have to.
That's right.
You just have to try and make it less awkward.
It's also a bit, for me, it feels like you're facing a black hole. It's like you're in space and there's a black hole in front of you that sucks everything out. It sucks everything in. It sucks in all the light and everything.
Yeah.
And so you're doing your jokes and they're just disappearing into a black hole. Everything just gets sucked into this void in front of you, like what you said. And also that sense that the whole room, you get the feeling the whole room is just going, no, we don't like you.
Yeah. Go
just
away.
no, fuck you.
Yeah.
You especially.
It feels personal, like that, like
really
that awkwardness,
personal.
like that, and then you sort of feel ridiculous,
Yeah.
but not in a good way. It's like, and then you're like, who was I to think that I could make these people
Yeah.
laugh? I should just go and hide myself. I'm
Well, and
awful.
I've been told that in those scenarios, like my people, like you can't see it on my face.
Yeah.
Addy's often said, so the worst part about all of this was that Addy was at home watching this live on TV, because it was live on TV.
Oh, wow.
Again. And So she was watching it, and when we met up at the airport, we just looked at each other with the because we didn't really speak since then.
Yeah.
Like we just met at the airport, and we looked at each other in the eye. We were like, let's go to China.
Let's just go to China.
Let's just get out of here.
Good. So I think it's a good response to that. To when you have a bad gig, just go to China.
Let's go to China.
But what I do take pleasure in is, I think I've talked about this before in the podcast, is when friends of mine, like you two, are having a shit gig with material that I know is good material. Like when I know that you've like crushed it with that material, and then you go on. It used to happen quite often at Sorry We're English.
Yeah. I don't know why. I don't know why it would happen, but we had the 2-man show. So I would go up first and do half an hour, and Paul would go up first and do half an hour. And normally, you're right, I would pretty much crush it, or I'd do all right in most gigs, and then there'd be the Sorry We're English gigs. There was like a series of about 4 or 5 of them where I would go up and after 5 minutes I just realised the audience are just like. And like they're just like, no, we're closing the door. And it's like, wait a minute, what the, and they're just like, nah. And I'm just there going through my material, and they're just like, okay, these are words, these are all words, and I'm just doing my stuff. And then I'm like, well, okay, thanks everyone. Now let me introduce you to Paul Taylor. And Paul comes up, and they're fucking falling over.
Not always. If you had a bad gig, I usually ended up having a not great gig.
Well, no, but on balance, you would get laughs out of them immediately.
If he's got his jokes, that he's got his punchlines, and he stops. It's like, yeah. I've been living it, but my French isn't ready yet. Normally that gets a good laugh, and it would just be silence, and I'd be in the back just going,
yeah.
Because it just makes me laugh.
That was the audience. That was the context in which the Russian joke happened.
Yeah, similar context.
Where they're like maybe the first half an hour of the show, it takes them half an hour to work out what the show is. I think sometimes they expected us to be on stage together.
Yeah, I think so.
And so me just talking to them on my own, in the back of their head, they're going, well, no, the show hasn't started yet. Or something. I don't know. But it didn't happen every time. No. Sometimes we had shows where it was great. But yeah, often I would just have these horrible experiences. And then Paul would go up and do well comparatively. And I'd be like, fuck's sake. Bad gig for me, talking about setting up a room, like the right conditions for a show. I think I told you about this once before. So I was...
this is the BBC thing?
This is when I was in London, yeah.
I think you've told us on the podcast before as well.
I don't know. We recorded an episode for you once, but you didn't end up using it. So I think that's when... Maybe I have told you on the podcast, but what the hell? Let's do it again.
Tell us again.
So... This is when I was living in London. So I used to, with some friends of mine, used to do a show on Tuesdays in Piccadilly Circus, and I used to host that show quite a lot. And one Tuesday, I hosted the show, and it was great. It just went really, really well. It was a really good show, and I smashed it at the end with my bit that I did at the end. And there was a woman in the audience who hosted a show at the BBC, and so she saw me and. She had this show at the BBC, and her normal host dropped out. So she's like, I need someone else. She contacted me and said, can you do this show at the BBC? And I was like...
Were you doing your BBC material at this stage?
Yeah, I did do the BBC material, yeah. And so... so I got this gig at the BBC, paid and all this kind of stuff, and it was Paul Chowdhury. Do you know him? He's a comedian, a professional comedian. He's on TV, absolutely brilliant. He was the headliner for the show,
right? And
I was there thinking, wow, I'm going to host a show at the BBC. This is in the fairly early days of being a comedian,
yeah.
And so I was really psyched up, and I came up with new material for it, and developed other material that I'd already got. And I was speaking to my cousin and my brother, and what do you think about this? Shall I do this? And they were like, yeah, you should definitely do that bit. And so I turn up at the BBC. It's the BBC bar. Right, so it's not in a studio or anything. It's
still
just
the BBC.
Yeah, still the BBC, but it's a BBC bar,
the canteen.
Yeah, kind of like the canteen. And it was a Wednesday or Thursday evening, and I go into the bar, and the bar is definitely not set up for comedy, and it's not a comedy club. There's a bar, a few little tables dotted around, some sofas, people sitting around, and lots of space between all of the people. So they're a table here, loads of space, a table here, loads of space, a couple of sofas over there, and no stage, just a little area in the corner of the room. And the woman's like, oh yeah, we've got no mic stand. No, we come in, and she's like, oh, our sound guy's not here. So I'm there like stressed out trying to set the gig up, connecting the microphone. No mic stand. The microphone comes off a mixing desk, which is on a sort of... There's like a pew in the corner of the room. So, listeners, a pew is where a priest would lead a sermon in a church.
No.
Like a little... No?
A pew.
Oh, a
is
pew
where you
is
sit down.
A pew is one of the benches in the church, but there's a
Pulpit.
Pulpit. That's it.
There you go.
I mean, I am Jewish, so I don't know why I know these things.
You listen to Radio 4, that's why. So there's a pulpit in the corner for some reason. And on the pulpit, there's a mixing desk and a microphone. So a pulpit, it's like listeners, it's like a little thing with a few stairs. It goes round to a space where a priest would deliver a sermon in a church. Okay. But for some reason, there's a pulpit in the corner of this bar. Don't know why. But anyway, so the mic was connected to a mixing desk on the pulpit. So you had to get the microphone off the pulpit and stand in front of the pulpit to do the show. But the cable from the microphone was not long enough. So literally the microphone would come over your shoulder. You're standing there and it's long enough for you to stand fairly far back, quite close to the pulpit with your back kind of close to it. And the microphone is like, just under your chin, but you can't move to the left, you can't move forward because the cable's not long enough. So you're restricted in standing in this one position. That alone would potentially ruin a whole gig.
Oh, totally, yeah.
Because the comedians can't move around. Second thing, directly above this spot where the microphone is, there is a speaker in the ceiling. You know, sometimes in offices or whatever, you get these speakers built into the ceiling for like, you know, announcements or whatever like that. So there's a speaker in the ceiling directly above this spot, and it's pumping out Radio 4. But it's BBC Radio 4 is coming out of this speaker, but no one, if you're not standing directly underneath it, you can't hear it. Right?
So you've got this internal sort of monologue of BBC 4.
You've got BBC Radio 4, you've got whatever it is that they're talking about, just sort of like, you know, the shipping forecaster above you, coming from above you.
Oh my God.
No one else in the place can hear it. Punters are in, but they're in to drink and eat their dinner. And they don't know a show is starting. So also no lights, so it's just normal lighting in the bar.
Terrible.
And so it's horrible. And I'm emceeing the thing. And so I go up, and you know, people are sort of sitting on their chairs and stuff. And
just the first question. So she said that her normal host wasn't available.
Yeah.
So they do it They were doing it every week in that place.
Yeah. And I don't know what it was what was different about it. Whether it was maybe
that's why he wasn't there.
Yeah,
because he was like, "Fuck this! I'm out of this. This is horrible conditions."
It could have been appalling every week, and so I was just one of a long line of MCs who were like, you know, well, it's a gig at the BBC and it's paid, but horrible. And so a few people were there, and including a girl who was doing her first show, and her uncle was there too to support her. Her uncle was, oh God, what's the guy's name? He used to play Holly in Red Dwarf, right?
The hologram.
Yeah. No, not the hologram, the computer.
The computer. I thought the computer was a woman.
Yeah, but in the first two series, it's a man.
It's funny we're talking about Red Dwarf on a side note, just because I was for some reason in the shower singing the theme trying to remember the lyrics to the theme song.
Cold outside, there's no type of atmosphere, all alone.
Okay, this guy, I'm showing Amber and Paul a picture of him.
Right.
So Red Dwarf, listeners, is a really great comedy sitcom that used to be on the BBC when we were growing up.
No type. Okay, so it's no type of atmosphere. For some reason in my mind, I knew it was
kind of atmosphere.
I was like, it's cold outside, no time for atmosphere. And I was like, no time for atmosphere doesn't make sense.
Is it no kind? And it was, no type, no kind.
So that's what it is.
Listeners,
this morning.
Amber and Paul are currently talking about the theme music to the show, which most people of our generation know.
Yeah.
Anyway, so his name is Norman Lovett, and he...
he wasn't loving it.
He was not loving it. But the thing about Norman Lovett is that, first of all, I was a massive Red Dwarf fan when I was a kid, and I had like all the videos, and Norman Lovett's one of the actors on the show, so immediately he was kind of a hero for me. Second thing is Norman Lovett was famous for being one of the original alternative stand-up comedians.
Oh, did he start in stand-up?
He performed at the Comedy Store, and he was like a stand-up comedian, one of the original great sort of English stand-ups, and that's why he got the part as Holly on the show. So he's a real stand-up royalty.
Yeah.
And so I was there hosting, and it was just nothing was working, and. Like we've experienced in the past, where, like, literally, I stepped up to the microphone, picked it up, and
it didn't work.
And I'm like, "Hello, everyone, welcome to the show." And like, people are literally putting their knives and forks down and turning around, looking over their shoulders at me. And I'm like, "It's great to be here."
Jane Garvey's talking above your head.
Well, I've got Radio 4, and I'm going, "Can anyone else hear Radio 4? I've got Radio 4 going on." None of them can hear Radio 4. So I'm just a madman, just a rambling madman in the corner, and I'm also like trying to speak in the upbeat way that a host would speak. Like, we've got some great acts for you this evening, and they were all just like raising their eyebrows, rolling their eyes at me. And the people who knew it was a show were sort of sitting on the right, and Norman Lovett was one of these people. And from time to time, I would glance at him. And he was just looking at me like, "Oh, I hate you." He hated what I was doing. I felt so crushed because.
But then his niece did a set.
His niece did a set.
How did the people who set?
Everybody died on their arse.
Okay.
Almost
That's
everyone that went up also died on their arse. But I got the impression.
I love that expression, to die on your arse rather than on your stomach.
Yeah,
you die on your arse.
Yeah. Like, the worst place you could die, which worst part of your body where you could die upon is your arse.
That's the best, because if I died right now sitting on this chair, I'd die on my arse.
Yeah, I don't
Most
know.
people probably die on their back or on their stomach.
I don't know.
Anyway,
I don't know. It's an interesting phrase, but anyway. So it was horrible, but I got the impression that everyone thought it was my fault or something. That like my terrible emceeing set the tone for the whole show.
Yeah.
And the reason I felt like that is because after the show, everyone was like talking to each other, the other comics, and Norman Lovett went over and made a point of saying hello to the other comedians and probably said encouraging things, and it's just no one talked to me at all. It's like I was like Kryptonite or something, and it was horrible. I just felt crushed
because I think a lot of them realised that it was a shit setup.
Yeah, so I think they thought that it was
your fault.
They thought I was responsible for the whole thing.
And that you regularly do this. This is how you MC. They don't realise that you were just random.
People that came down to the bar, would it not be like a regular night where people would come down and see it?
Yeah, but the BBC, very big place, they're kind of going, "Hey, let's go for a drink in the bar," and they all go down to the bar, and it's like, "Oh, there's a comedy show." So that...
Yeah.
Oh,
BBC. But this is back to our original thing, badly organised gigs.
But Paul Chowdhury didn't die on his arse. I was amazed. I was really impressed. By the time he got up on stage, and I'd looked him up online beforehand, and I saw that he'd been in a film. So I was like, "Oh, great comedian. He's been in a film and everything." And then I came off stage before while one of the other acts was on, and the woman was like, "Paul said don't mention the film." I'm like, "Oh God!"
Fucking hell!
And then I did actually talk.
He didn't mention it to you though, did he?
No, because for some reason. But I did talk to Paul Chowdhury, and actually, of all the people that I met that evening, he was the most friendly person, and I actually was quite impressed by him because he was very funny. He was like everyone else. It was fucked up with everyone else. It was like awkward and difficult, and no one knew what they were doing. He was the only person who I felt like knew exactly what was going on. He'd seen it countless times before. He was cracking jokes to the woman who was organising it, saying stuff like, "He doesn't want to do that. He wants a career," and all about me. And then he went up and he absolutely smashed it. He slayed the room, and what he did was he pointed out every single thing that was wrong with the situation that everyone was thinking. And that was true, but no one was saying. He pointed absolutely every single thing out. He made fun of people in the audience, and he made fun of the microphone and all of it. It was brilliant. He was hilarious.
So I had a very similar experience with him, and this was my first experience ever of stand-up when I was at university in my last year. I've told this story many times when people are like, "Oh, how did you start doing stand-up?" It was when I was at university in my last year. There was a comedy night at the bar of the university. Sounds like a similar setup. Shit, right? There were like, I can't even remember who they were. He was the headliner of the show. The first like 3 people that went on, it was horrific. It was terrible. And I'm sitting there the whole time going, how are these people getting paid to do this? It's not funny. He came on, did exactly the same thing, started talking about all of the stuff. And when I saw him after that set, and I thought, that's what I want to do. Like, I think I can do that. I think I can. And then I remember my first open mics in London. It was horrific. I would get on stage and I'd be like, all right, cool. So this lampshade here is quite awful, isn't it? No, okay. And so I tried to imitate what I saw him doing, and it never. Obviously, when you do that, because I was the only one. It wasn't an awkward situation. So I think it's when it's an awkward situation. Anyway, so it's funny,
but it's also confidence to call things out.
But also because he makes it look easy, and that's the thing about stand-up, is that it's like magic. It's not like, people compare it to like music or something in terms of entertainment. It's more like magic, because if you can see how they did it, then it doesn't work. Like if you can see how the comedian has made you laugh, somehow it makes it less impressive. It's best when it looks like the comic is just making casual observations, but it's making everyone in the room laugh, because there is technique, there is craft in there, but the really good people make it look like nothing's really happening.
It's a really good analogy, because if you ever go to see a show and there's somebody that's improvising or riffing with the audience, and you're all dying laughter, you're like, wow, this is amazing, that's so fun. You go back and see them a second time, and you see that in reality, all those jokes are already made, and they're just riffing with different people, but the same topics come out. You go, oh, it's like seeing the magic trick from the opposite side. It's like once you find out how they pick the card and choose it, you go, yeah, all right, it's not that impressive anymore.
Because the average audience member, as far as they're concerned, this is just someone talking. It's just someone comes up and they start to just introduce themselves to you, and for some reason you're knocked out by how hilarious they are. But what you don't see is the months of work, and the bad gigs, and the bad experiences, and the sleepless nights, and the rewriting, and those bad times where the comic probably at some point has gone, I can't do this anymore. What am I going to do with my life? I've invested so much time in being a comedian. I can't back out now. The desperation. But then when it's a good show and you see a comic kill the audience, as it were, then that's when the magic actually happens. Okay, all right. Well, I think
so. That was a good.
That was a good introduction.
That was a good introduction to the actual real content, which is.
Well, we've been talking for about an hour and 3 minutes. This will become the good and bad gig experiences episode. But on balance, after all of those horrible experiences, it's nice to be able to go up in front of over 1,000 people and make them laugh, and even just applaud statements that you make. It's, that's nice, isn't it?
Very nice.
And I'm looking forward to seeing your show when it does finally come out on Canal Plus and on YouTube. And then people can actually see that it's really good and really funny. Thanks for telling us some stories of some good and bad comedy experiences, and thanks for coming back on the podcast. Hopefully speak to the two of you again soon, since you've got a bit more time on your hands now.
Yes, sir.
It might be more of a possibility.
Yes.
Okay? Say goodbye to my audience, would you please?
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Hold on. Don't go anywhere. We haven't finished yet. I need to kind of do the ending part of this episode, don't I? Yes, you do, Luke. Good. That's all of you agreeing with me. And applauding as well, hopefully, for everything I say. That would be nice. Imagine that. If everything you did, there was just a huge audience of people applauding you all the time. It would boost your confidence, wouldn't it? Yes, it would. Okay, good, fine. You agree. You're just not applauding me anymore. You're just like, no, we can't applaud. Our hands. We're using our hands to do other things. What are you doing with your hands? Never mind. Okay, I won't ask. Let's not go down that particular avenue any further than we already have done. So there you go. That was Amber and Paul and me recorded in my flat just the other day. I hope you enjoyed listening to some of our stories of doing comedy there. Just a couple of comments at the end here from me to you. You'll notice that there wasn't much from Amber in this episode. Did you notice? I did. While listening back, I was like, oh, Amber didn't said very much. Didn't said? What? What happened to your grammar? I've no idea. I'm tired. There's no excuse. Sorry. Anyway, Amber didn't say very much, you may have noticed. Paul and I did most of the talking, I think. Perhaps we didn't really let her get a word in. Maybe we just talked too much and she didn't get a chance to say things. Maybe. Although I think she was happy. But still, sorry to the Amber fans who missed out on some of her input. And yes, of course, her lovely, lovely voice. I'll make sure that we get more Amber input next time they're on the podcast, which should be fairly soon because Paul is now less busy than he was before and is more available for podcasting duties. Not that it's a duty, but the point is, hopefully there'll be more Amber and Paul coming up on the podcast in the not too distant future. And when that happens, I'll make sure we get more from Amber so we can hear her lovely, lovely, lovely voice. Bonus audio in the Luke's English podcast app. You'll find nearly 20 minutes of bonus audio from this episode in the Luke's English podcast app. If you're listening in the app, just tap the gift icon to access that bonus audio. What's the bonus audio, Luke? Well, basically, you'll hear more of our conversation, which wasn't included in this episode. There were some things I didn't include. Some things I did record with the three of us, with them and me. That's three, isn't it? 1, 2, 3. Yeah, 3. So there was some stuff that I did record, but I didn't include in the final episode because I didn't want it to be too long. But that bonus audio is available in the app. And in that bonus audio, we talk about more comedy-related topics, including what it's like to receive negative comments on YouTube, and also how Paul has been accused of stealing a joke from Louis C.K., which is not true, by the way, he didn't. So a bit of stuff about joke theft involving Paul and the infamous Louis C.K., who keeps being mentioned on this podcast. So joke theft. Joke theft is actually a very serious business among comedians. It's one of the big no-nos in stand-up. And if you're found guilty of joke theft, it can be very bad for your reputation and your career. The thing is, it can be quite hard to work out if someone has actually stolen someone else's joke or whether the two people just came up with the same bit independently, which is possible, of course, depending on the joke. But Paul has been falsely accused of taking material from Louis C.K., but he didn't. They both just happened to have come up with the same joke at around the same time. Now, basically, this is a joke about how French people measure body temperature. How do you measure body temperature? That's not the beginning of a joke. It sounds like the beginning of a joke. How do French people measure their body temperature? It's not that kind of joke. Anyway, that's the subject of the joke. What about you? How do you measure body temperature in your country? For example, if you feel like you're sick, if you're ill and you need to take your temperature, how do you do it? Where do you put where do you put the thermometer? Well, in France, they measure body temperature by sticking the thermometer up the bum. Woo! Straight up the bum there. Apparently, you get a more accurate reading that way. But anyway, it seems in most other countries, people just put it in the mouth or maybe under the arm, but the French, up the bum. Now, this is an observation that Paul has been talking about on stage for several years, and he's produced a whole bit about it. And Louis C.K. recently started talking about it too in his stand-up, because these days he is with a French woman, and he has spent some time in France recently, so he's probably noticed this. I don't know if he's actually noticed with his eyes, like French people sticking thermometers up their bums, like just, out and about in France. Like, here we are in France in a nice cafe. Ooh, nice cup of coffee. Oh my God, look at that person sticking what's he oh my goodness. Just French people sticking thermometers up their bums. Like, I tell you one thing I've noticed is, I don't think he noticed it like that. I think it's more that, I don't know, it came up in conversation or whatever. Anyway, it's just something that Louis C.K. probably has noticed since spending time in France. And some of Louis' stand-up shows have been leaked on YouTube, including that bit about thermometers that he's been doing as well. Also, Paul recently published a clip from his stand-up show which included his thermometer joke. So some people have seen the videos and then mistakenly thought that Paul stole the joke from Louis. The fact is they both just came up with exactly the same observation independently of each other, which does happen sometimes. Paul's been doing that material for several years at least, and he has recordings to prove it. But anyway, if you want to hear about the whole thermometer bum Louis C.K. joke theft accusation scandal, then check out the bonus audio, because we talk about that a bit and a few other things too. That's only in the Luke's English Podcast app, which you can get from the App Store completely free. Just whichever version of the App Store it is, if it's Android or Apple or whatever, just go in there, search for Luke's English Podcast app. In the app, you can also get the full episode archive, plus loads of app-only episodes and content, plus, of course, the option to subscribe to Luke's English Podcast Premium content. And you can register for LEP Premium to get episodes in which I teach you vocabulary, grammar, and pronunciation with PDF worksheets. And they're all of the premium content is available in the app or online. Okay, teacherluke.co.uk/premium to get that stuff. Also, join the mailing list on my website to get a link for the episode pages of new episodes when they are published. The link will be sent to your email address. Thank you again to Amber and Paul for being on the podcast. Thank you to you for listening. I hope you enjoyed our stories of embarrassment and humiliation in this episode. As ever, leave your comments on the website. Check the page for this episode, where you will see some transcriptions and some videos, including footage of Paul dying on his arse at the French Football Awards and the vlog that he made about it. So if you want to kind of like go with Paul to the French Football Awards, if you want to see him looking very smart in his suit and his bow tie, and if you want to see his immediate reactions, then you can watch his vlog video. Generally, keep in touch. Send me an email with your thoughts. I've got more episodes about comedy coming up, specifically ones in which we listen to some clips and then understand them in detail. So you could look forward to that. But for now, have a wonderful day, morning, night, evening, whatever it is. And please remember to be excellent to each other. Speak to you again soon. But for now, goodbye. Bye. 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 Thanks for listening to Luke's English Podcast. For more information, visit teacherluke.co.uk.